Hey, everybody, how you doing? Well, that's good. Welcome to PHLY Flyers, presented by Mortgage CS. Check out mortgagecs.com/PHLY to start your home buying process today. Company NMLS ID, number 1464766. My name is Bill Matz. I'm your director of fun and games for the afternoon. I almost said evening. Joining me today is Philadelphia's #1 hockey beat reporter, Charlie O'Connor. Happy Winger Wednesday to you, Charlie. What's your favorite Winger song?
You put this in Twitter, on
Yes.
Twitter, and until you tweeted that, I was not aware there was a band named Winger. I cannot express clearly enough that basically the entirety of 80s hair metal, I don't even want to call it a musical blind spot because I just don't.
You see it.
I don't like the entire genre.
Don't like it.
I know the big bands, obviously, and I can go for like a few of the classic Guns N' Roses songs, sure, because they're legends. But for the most part, I am very happy that grunge showed up and killed hair metal because I don't like the genre.
It's like I knew you didn't know, but today we're breaking down the wingers in the upcoming draft class, and when I saw the thumbnail Winger Wednesday, I was like, oh, that would be fun if we could use licensed music. But of course,
Are they still licensed?
Charlie has.
Are they big enough that like they would sue us?
That's a good question. They might call us and be like, thanks, man. Thanks. But we're going to talk about the wingers in the upcoming draft. That's what we're doing today. Finishing up our first round of draft preview stuff. Last week, we got to the centers. We got to the defensemen. Today, we're going to do the wings. But before we get into any of that, Charlie released his first mock draft.
Yeah.
Was it last night,
The first half of the first mock draft.
You covered the lottery edition. You covered the first 16 picks, the teams that did not make the playoffs.
Basically, this is what I would have done had I not been on vacation for 2 weeks right after the lottery.
Yeah.
So I wanted to kick it off with it because I do plan to do another full mock draft of the first round at least, maybe the second round. I'll see if I decide to go that far. But I want to do that in the immediate lead up to the draft, maybe 4 or 5 days before the draft, maybe even sooner to the actual draft buzzer going off and us beginning the selection process on, June 29th, 28th?
I think it's the 28th and
28th and 29th. So I'll do another one closer. But I wanted to get one out here just because I wanted to give everyone an idea of sort of how I see, based on what I've read, based on what I've heard, how I'm assuming the first round might shape up and who might be available around the range where the Flyers pick. So I wanted to get that out there, and today is the first 16 picks, as you said, and then tomorrow, the first 16 picks, the one today, that's available to everyone. Tomorrow, when I do the back half of the first round, obviously the Flyers do have a second first-round pick. That will be for diehards only. I'm getting back on the writing saddle. It's been a few weeks, but we're gonna pump out, I think, at least 3 articles, if not more, this week, and we're getting back into the swing of things. Last week it was the jet lag. It was getting back used to the shows. It was starting to finish up all the research so that I felt comfortable writing these articles. Now it's time to get the content back on allphly.com.
If there's one thing you can count, Charlie's not going to slack. Here's the thing, kids. Like, maybe I'm going to throw a show together that might not be my best work. Charlie is always going to bring it. And, of course, if you want that second half of Charlie's mock draft, become a diehard, damn it. We're not going to go through 1 through 16 today because, go to allphly.com, read it for yourselves. That would be cool for all of us. I do want to know about some of is there anything that you may have surprised yourself or anything you've had a ton of pushback on? Because I think the thing that I noticed first more than anything, you got my guy going to the Flyers.
Got your guy at 12, Carter Yakimchuk.
And Cole Eiserman, one of the I always, there's the guys whose names we know and guys whose names we learned during the draft process. Cole Eiserman was one of the players whose names we knew. Not in your top 16.
At one time, he was viewed, I think, as a consensus top 3, if not top 2. He was kind of viewed as the other guy, aside from Macklin Celebrini. Look, everything I've heard is that there is legitimate possibility that he could slide. And first, it looked like that slide was, maybe he slides out of the top 10. Now, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility he slides out of the lottery, not because he's a bad prospect, but because I'm just getting the sense, number one, that there are other forwards that have significantly more helium. You know, guys like Beckett Seneca, guys like Jet Luchenko. There are guys that are going up, and it just seems like I think Eiserman is getting nitpicked a little bit. I think teams are they've watched him for so long, they've determined what his weaknesses are, whereas some of the other guys, like say somebody like Seneca, who is having or had the big playoff run for Oshawa in the OHL playoffs, you start finding reasons to like them. Whereas with Eiserman, I think teams are finding reasons to not like him. I personally have Eiserman in my top 10. However, and I've said this on the show, and we'll get into this when we get into the wingers, even though he's in my top 10, I think there are other players that I also think have a chance to be there at 12 who I like more than Eiserman, which is why I'm not of the opinion that, like, if Eiserman's there, you got to take him. It's like, well, it depends on who else is there. Maybe if other guys are gone, I would be fine with an Eiserman pick. But I don't think it's crazy to think that Eiserman will slide. I don't think he's going to slide out of the first round. That's insane. But I could see him sliding to the late teens, you know, into that 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 range. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility, given everything I've read and given where the winds seem to be blowing.
I'll tell you, when I see, that trade we saw made with the Blackhawks the other day, where it's, wow, why are we're really like swapping picks? This is sort of a day of kind of trade,
they moved
right?
up from 20 to 18. It was an odd trade to happen a month before the draft.
Like that trade happens like when the team at 15 is on the board, you know?
Yeah.
You're like, oh, my guy might be falling here. Do you think that might have, at 18, if the cutoff, like we thought, was at 14, but now some guys are starting to move up a little, it's like, oh, maybe I should get into the late teens and see if I can steal an Eiserman or something like that?
I talk about this in the mock draft that's coming out tomorrow, the one for diehards only, because it was very interesting seeing them make that trade now. And I can only think of two possible explanations why Chicago did it. Explanation one, which I find to be the more unlikely, because it would require a lot of inside info, is Chicago is confident, very confident, that their guy is going to be there at 18, and they're also very confident that that guy is not going to be there at 20. Like, they know for a fact that Vegas loves whoever their guy is, who they think is going to be there at 18, because maybe he's a guy who isn't necessarily on everybody's board, but he's a guy they love, but they heard from someone reliable that Vegas or the Islanders, the team they traded with, also loves him, and they want to jump those guys now. Might as well do it now since we have the intel. That seems unlikely, because that would require a lot of intel to be that confident. The other explanation...
You need like 19 teams preferred player.
Yes. It just... I guess it's possible, just seems unlikely. The other explanation, and this I suspect is what it is that Chicago is betting that one or two guys are going to slip, and they are betting that if they were to wait until draft day, the cost would be higher, because then it's not you're trading up to 18. It's you're trading for Cole Eiserman.
You're trading for a guy.
And then suddenly teams can ask for more. So their bet is someone's going to slip to 18 who shouldn't slip, and we are going to get that pick by trading early cheaper than if we waited until draft day, until there was a certainty that that guy's going to be there. It's an intriguing strategy. I don't know if I quite agree with it, but if, for example, a Cole Eiserman slips to 18, then suddenly it looks like a brilliant strategy, because yes, if Cole Eiserman is there at 18 and the Blackhawks really, really like him, and they were actually sitting at 20, they didn't make this trade, yeah, it probably will cost more than the two picks they had to trade to move up a month before the draft, because that is a player that multiple teams will probably be trying to trade up to get. So I don't know how it's going to play out, but that's my assumption as to why Chicago made that deal early. We'll see if it pays off for him.
We will. And I know, like, what I hear of, oh, yeah, man, like Cole Eiserman. And again, it's a result of a lot of, listen, there's players whose names we know, and he's one of those guys, but Cole Eiserman might slip. We do have second first rounder would be nice, but also it looks like that's going to be at like 31 or 32.
Yeah, with the way Florida
like
looks,
30 at the
especially.
early, yeah.
Although I guess that series is only 2-2. The Rangers, with the way Shesterkin's playing, they could very easily still steal that series. They have home ice. They have 2 of the final 3 games at home. So even though it feels like Florida has been the better team in that series, it's 2-2.
It is.
And the Rangers have the better goalie. So maybe the Flyers will get the the 28th or 29th or 30th pick rather than the 31st or 32nd.
I think because of record, it'll be 30 or more or higher. I'm not sure. I'm not positive.
I think it depends
Can it be
on
29?
It depends on who loses, because I believe Florida has the better record than Edmonton, but they have the worst
Dallas,
record than Dallas. So it would depend on who would lose on the other side, whether they would be 29 or 30.
My assumption has always been Dallas is winning, so that's what I've committed
but
to.
Again, that series could go the other way too.
Absolutely.
It's only 2-1. But yeah, so in my mock draft, I know a lot of people, especially online, seems like they're very, very high on Cole Eiserman. Again, I think it's the familiarity. He's been talked about for so much. We'll get to him a little bit later. If you're watching on YouTube, we have a little, PTI style subheading. I don't know what you even call that, an overlay, something like that, that shows what we're going to be talking about in the show.
Third.
So right now we're talking about the mock draft. After that, we will be talking about the top tier wingers in the draft and so on. It's just a new little addition for our YouTube live viewers and I guess after the fact viewers. We're just going to experiment with some things, some graphics in the summer to try to make this a better viewing experience for everybody. But going back to the draft for a second, the one that I was personally surprised about, because the way that this mock draft shapes up, at least the lottery portion, is the Flyers have the opportunity to pick between Carter Yakimchuk and Berkeley Cadden. And I make the point in the mock draft that I personally would pick Berkeley Cadden. But I do not think it is outlandish to think that if the Flyers were posed that option, especially if they don't think Berkeley Cadden can stick down the middle, they might go with Yakimchuk. They might say, we think he can be a number 1 defenseman. We would rather have a number 1 defenseman than a number 1 winger because we already have a number 1 winger, we think, in Matvei Michkov. If we don't think he's a center, we're going to go with Yakimchuk. I made that point in the article. I hold to it, and I don't think it would be a reach. It would just be they prefer one really good prospect over another really good prospect. I really like Yakimchuk too. So I don't think it would be an insane reach or a stupid decision. It would just be their personal preference. What was interesting to me, though, is the more I looked at it, I thought to myself, if the Flyers don't take Cadden and he slips to 12, I don't know if Minnesota does, because one thing that Bill Guerin has been getting across both in exit interviews and also via, maybe not via it's him, but like people like Michael Russo, who are very plugged in Minnesota, is this idea that he thinks that Minnesota is too small. There's been some scattered rumors, we've talked about them, that they might be willing to trade Marco Rossi because they think they're too small up front. Wow. If they're willing to explore the possibility of moving Marco Rossi, I'm skeptical they would then that month draft Berkeley Cadden, another small-ish center/winger type guy with the 13th overall pick. And it just made me think, like, man, if Cadden's available at 12 and the Flyers don't take him, like, does Cadden slip to 14? Does he slip to 15? Like, could he be a guy who slips, especially if there's a run on defensemen? If Minnesota's like, we need a big guy, we're going to take that big Norwegian defenseman who's rising, then you're going to San Jose. San Jose, we assume, is taking Macklin Celebrini with the first overall pick, but they have Will Smith that they took last year. They got
he just signed,
yeah. So then it's like, okay, do they take Berkeley Cadden? I projected them to take him because I'm like, look, San Jose just needs talent. So, but would they look at it and say, well, do we really need another like smallish center if we already have Celebrini, who's not small, but he's not big, and then Will Smith's another one of those guys who are like not super small, but he's not big. Maybe they think, we'd rather have a Cole Eiserman than a Berkeley Cadden. Does Berkeley Cadden slip to 15, 16, 17? These are just some interesting things that came to mind when I was going through this draft of, there are guys who could maybe slip further than we think they will.
Because of the premium on defensemen and how there's definitely going to be that run on them where it's like, well, shit, they're starting to go. We got to get ours.
That's what I really think is going to happen.
I think this is going to be an interesting draft, not just because the Flyers have a couple of picks, also where teams like San Jose have their second pick. Like, okay, we're getting Celebrini. What else do we need?
Right.
Do you suddenly start drafting for need? Like, do teams start to? I think it's going to be like the middle of the first round is going to be very interesting.
Yeah.
Looking forward to this
And
draft.
we've seen this happen before. Look at Matt Barzell in his draft here. I mean, I thought he was a guy who I liked at 7, even over Provorov, and he slips to the late teens. The Islanders get an absolute steal, and now he's a stud. I mean, that could easily happen to somebody like Cole Eiserman or Berkeley Cadden.
What if Boston has 3 straight picks and they don't take anybody good?
Speaking of that, it is very funny to me. Like, how many times over the last 5 years has Jake DeBrusk been traded in the media and he's still on the Bruins? Like, he's their Morgan Frost. He is going to spend his entire career a Boston Bruin.
Morgan Frost, the only guy on Frank Saravalli's trade target list.
Yeah, the only flyer on Frank's
yes,
list.
Yeah. Good stuff. Before we get into the actual wingers of this draft, let's talk for a second about Game Time, because Game Time is the place for last minute MLB ticket deals. Listen, I know we're all panicking, it's happening, but we still have an amazing baseball team here, and when they get back home, man, we gotta get them going again.
They weren't going to win every single game.
It might be a little crazy to think that they were going to set the win record. It might be like, they're just like a 105 win team, not a 120 win team. But when they come back home, I think we're all going to want to get back out there, and the best place to do it, it's with Game Time. You know about the killer last minute deals, the all-in pricing, views from your seat, and the lowest price guarantee. With all that combined, man, it just goes to prove that Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. And Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. And with the flash deals, you can save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. There's plenty of events to choose from. Obviously, baseball, probably the hottest ticket in town right now, even with the many slump the team's in. You can check out so many great shows and games coming up. Rolling Stones coming to the link, Pink, so much more. I'm really looking forward to Green Day in August. It's going to be a great time. You can take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets and take the guesswork out of buying any tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code PHLY20 or PHLY for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code PHLY for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, now we get into the winger preview.
Hey-o.
That's right.
Yeah, we did the centers and defensemen last week. Then we effed around on Friday, so we didn't talk about the wingers. And then yesterday it was a little recapping
rumor roundup
of what was discussed over the long Memorial Day weekend.
Stupid fun shit when people were bored at home. So all of a sudden, Flyers are trading for everybody.
Isn't that the point of Twitter?
It really is.
It really is. But today we're back to kind of conclude our draft preview. We're not going to do a preview on the goalies. I'm not saying that there aren't goalies available in this draft. There are. I suspect the Flyers will take at least one, given their track record. It seems like what they do. It does not seem like there are any goalies that are going to go in the first round. So that is more the focus here, are guys that could go in the first round, which is why we're not going to do goalies. But there are quite a few wingers who will go in the first round. So let's talk about it.
And it is interesting. There are a few guys on here who might have overlap because we're not sure about the winger center designation. So we're going to kind of talk about them at both.
Yeah, the question marks I have on our sheets.
Yeah.
I will explain why I have question marks. So
we'll start with the top tier here.
Yes, let's kick it off.
Ivan Demidov, Tij Iginla. I got it. Yeah, it's like TJ, but
it's like Tij. Yeah, it's like you're saying Tij as a shortened version of TJ, except that's actually his name.
Beckett Seneca, Cole Eiserman, Berkeley Cadden. These are the guys we believe are the top of the top here.
Yes. So I have a question mark next to Eiserman and Cadden for different reasons. With Cadden, it's because he might be a center. I think there is legitimate debate on whether he projects as a center or a winger. I've talked to people who I respect who believe he's a winger. I've read people who I respect who believe he can stick down the middle. I just don't think there is an industry-wide consensus on whether he's a center or a winger, but he's certainly a guy who can play the wing. You know, it's not that he can't be a winger. It's that he obviously is more valuable if he's a center. That's why I have him on this list, because even if he's a winger, he's a top 14 caliber pick as a winger too. He's that dynamic. He's that skilled. He has that kind of talent. Cole Eiserman, I have a question mark here because I don't know if he's viewed as a top tier winger anymore. I think people like the fans, and when I say fans, I don't mean Flyers fans. I mean general NHL fans. I think still view him as a top 10, top 12, top 14 pick. I'm not sure that is the industry consensus anymore. So I personally put him in the top tier. I have him in my top 10. Like, I view Cole Eiserman as a top 10 prospect in this draft. But I am not confident that he is going to go in the top 10. I don't know if he is really, truly a top-tier winger in the scouting community's estimation anymore, which is why I have him on here, but with that question mark.
All right, so I'm going to start at the top. Ivan Demidov. There was, I think, a little concern about, I mean, there always will be some sort of Russian concern. That's paramount.
Sure.
But with the Fedotov situation being cleared up, with all of the talk that Michkov, he's coming over and he's coming over early. Do you think that alleviates some of the concern?
I think so. Personally, I do. I think it does. Number one, I do think that plays a role. The Fedotov stuff was what really scared people because it's terrifying. It's not even just terrifying for teams looking at a guy who, oh, this guy was supposed to come over, he had an entry-level deal, and then he disappears. It's also terrifying for the player.
Yeah, they're like, well, I could just keep playing in the KHL and not get sent to military camp.
Exactly. So it lowers their incentive to want to come over. So I think that played a big role, and now the Fedotov is over. I think teams are breathing a little bit easier, that was a one-time anomaly rather than a sign of things to come. And now you have the positive stuff coming out about Michkov, where Michkov had 3 more years left on his contract, now might have only had to do 1. I mean, he's
going to do 1.
That's the best case scenario. I would think at worst he'll only have to do 2.
Yeah.
But it seems like the momentum is going in the direction of him coming over as soon as this summer. Demidov always only had 1 year. He has next year on his contract with SKA, and then it expires. And the assumption from what I've read is that he will come over after that year is done. If you remove the geopolitical concerns and you don't have as much of a contract concern, because even in a worst case scenario, he's only going over there for 1 more year, which might have been what the team would want him to do anyway. He might not be a guy who is ready to make the jump immediately. You know, 2nd, 3rd, 4th overall picks don't always. In fact, I would say more often than not, they probably do spend 1 more year wherever they are rather than jumping straight to the NHL right after the draft. I don't think there's that much concern. I think that with Demidov, now it's more about what do you view him as a prospect? And I think the consensus is that he's a top 5 prospect in this draft. I personally think he's the 2nd best prospect in this draft, but there are other people who view him a little bit less. They are a little bit concerned about the size, the fact that he doesn't have a breakaway skating gear, despite the fact that he's not a huge winger. For me, the skill level is just through the roof.
You mocked him at 2 to Chicago.
I mocked him at 2 to Chicago. I just feel like, and I'm not saying that Chicago might not decide we need a defenseman. This is a defenseman draft. We can get our future number 1 right here. But the idea of pairing Demidov with Bedard, to me, is just so enticing. Because Bedard is, at heart, a goal scorer. Demidov is, at heart, a playmaker. Bedard's a center. He's a goal-scoring center. And they want him to stick down the middle, obviously. Those are kind of rare. Usually the centers are the playmakers. So if you want him to be a goal-scoring center, a Austin Matthews type, obviously he's not as big as Austin Matthews, but Austin Matthews is very much a center who scores 60 goals a year. It would help to pair him with an elite playmaking winger. And Demidov, to me, looks like that elite playmaking winger. I don't think there's any chance at all he ever gets anywhere near the Flyers, but I do view him as an incredible prospect, and I think he could be a future star in this league, to be sure.
I think maybe one of your most interesting picks in the mock was 6 to Calgary, Tij Iginla.
9.
9. Yeah. 6, 9, same thing.
Yeah, same thing, right?
Iginla, man, that would be so cool.
It would be really good.
I don't know, and you even put in there, like, I can't imagine if you're in that position being like, we're not doing it. You know, and it's totally different because, like, who knows if Jeremiah Trotter Jr. can play, but how can you tell the fan base, this dude who you all love, his kid's in the draft, and we're not going to do it.
And we passed
Yeah,
on
we're
it.
not like, it's not as if it's a reach. He's really good.
It would take enormous balls to pass on Tij Iginla. Like I say in the mock draft, I would give them credit if they had the guts, because
we have someone higher. Sorry.
Yeah, like, sorry, I know you love him. I know Iginla is a franchise legend, but sorry, we're doing this for the good of the franchise. I don't know if Iginla is going to be there at 9. It seems like he's absolutely a riser. The one team that I look at and I wonder if they are the team that pulls the trigger is Ottawa, because they're one of those teams like Buffalo where they have the talent and it seems like they feel like there's just something off with that team, and getting someone like Iginla who is that hardworking, do the little things type of scorer, who also, Jerome Iginla, not only was he an all-time great, he also is generally speaking viewed as like an all-time person.
Yeah.
Like, he is just a great dude.
Incredibly highly regarded.
Yes.
Off the ice, leader.
Yes.
All the shit that you want to hear and that the hockey men eat up.
Yes. And I wonder if Ottawa will look at him and say, even though like there will be a bunch of really good defensemen available at 7, I had them taking one of them, that they just can't let Iginla pass by them because they feel like he will be that piece that brings the whole thing together for them. That would be the team I wonder if they go for Iginla. But if Iginla isn't taken by Ottawa, I think there's a decent chance he gets to Calgary. And if he gets to Calgary, how do they let him go? Like, how do they let him? I really like Tij Iginla. I think that he maybe doesn't have quite the upside as some of the other forwards in this draft. Like, I think Berkeley Catton has higher upside. But Iginla, he's just one of those guys where you watch him and his game projects so well to the NHL. Like, you watch him and you see an NHL player when you watch him.
There's not a high bust fat.
No, not at all.
Very, very high floor, as they would say.
I would say so. And I think the ceiling is high too. Like, the ceiling is first line winger.
Yeah.
But the floor is like really good middle 6 winger that you want on your team. So Iginla's exciting. He's honestly not a guy that I've spent, like, I did a lot of tape watching over the last month. I watched him when I was learning about him as a player. I haven't done a lot more because I just don't think
he's getting to 12.
I don't think there's any way he gets to 12. Like, I think his floor is Calgary, because if he gets to Calgary, how is Calgary letting him pass?
That's okay. So it's not even that would be very interesting situation. It's going to be like, okay, is he going to go 1 more? Is he going to go 2 more? Okay, now he's at Calgary. Yeah. He has to go.
Well, the thing too about the Tij Iginla, and why I think he is something of a pivot in this draft, especially for the Flyers, is if he were to go 7 to Ottawa and therefore Calgary cannot take him, Calgary really needs defensemen, and Carter Yakimchuk is based in Calgary. He plays for the Hitmen.
He's a hitman.
So I wonder if Iginla isn't there, do they take Yakimchuk? And if they take Yakimchuk, what does that do for the Flyers board?
I want a Calgary Hitmen Yakimchuk jersey so freaking bad. All right, we will get to Beckett Senecki now.
Seneca.
I said that the first time.
You did. You had it right the first time.
Jesus Christ. Beckett Seneca, this might be the player I've done the least. Like,
well, he's a riser.
Yeah.
When I first started this draft research at the end of the season, he seemed like he was more in the late teens. Now it seems like he's top 10, and possibly that might be selling him short, at least in terms of the way that NHL teams view him.
So would you say he might be a guy that pushes someone to fly, like Yakimchuk, down to the Flyers? If Iginla is the guy who might, if he goes early, could be someone that the Flyers like is going to go earlier than you'd expect. Could Seneca be the dude who pushes somebody down?
I could see it. I'm not ruling out anything for the Flyers. Maybe the scouts in the Flyers scouting department say this Beckett Seneca is going to be the next Mikko Rantanen. You got to get him. But I'm just skeptical that the Flyers would take, because he is a pure winger. This is not he's a center, but he might be a winger, or he plays wing, but we see characteristics in him that could make him into a center at the NHL level. No, he's a winger in juniors, and he is expected to be a winger in the pros. That's who he is. I just don't know if the Flyers would take a pure, no doubt about it, winger at 12 if there are defensemen and centers staring at them. That's why I just wonder if Seneca is really an option for the Flyers at 12. Like, he would be an option for the Flyers if he was there at 16 and the Flyers had made the playoffs or something like that and lost in the first round. But at 12, given the guys who are going to be available, to me, Seneca is a better option for a team that already has established centers. Like, I mocked him in my mock draft today. I mocked him to the Devils. The Devils have centers. Like, the Devils are set at center. They don't need, like, could they draft Berkeley Catton because they just think he's the best player on the board? Sure, they certainly could. Not ruling it out. But they don't have the same need for center that the Flyers do. Like, they don't have to prioritize a Berkeley Catton or a Constant Hellenius because they need centers. They got Nico Hischier. They got Jack Hughes. Like, they have even guys like Dawson Mercer. Like, they have centers. They have guys who can solidify that position for years to come. They don't need a center the same way the Flyers do. So while Beckett Seneca is interesting to me because he's a quick riser, his big thing is that he was always a guy that people liked the skill level, but the production wasn't anything special. He was just barely above point per game with Oshawa this season, 68 points in 63 games, but he killed it in the playoffs. And that was the moment when scouts are like, okay, now the production is living up to the talent. And this is a draft where it's a little light on high-end puck skills. Seneca has high-end puck skills, and I put him at 10. To me, that's a little rich for me. Like, I have him ranked 13 on my board. I like him a lot, but I don't have him as a top 10 pick. Every mock draft I read from people who are plugged in, like Corey Proman, are kind of like, he might go even higher. So this is a guy who, like, he could be a big shake-up guy for the draft. If he's a guy who one of the teams that I'm assuming is going to take a defenseman, if they say, no, we want this really talented winger who we think is just coming into his own, I do not think he will be available at 12. I also think that if he was available at 12, my guess is the Flyers wouldn't prioritize him, but I don't think he's going to be available at 12. I think he has risen up enough over the last month or so, especially driven by that playoff run for Oshawa, that he's going to be long gone by the time the Flyers pick.
All right, this is something, it's going to come up a little later if we get to the TK stuff I'm going to get to today, but just based on what you said, how the Flyers might not prioritize a winger simply because look at the roster.
Yeah.
Like, and that doesn't even include Michkov at this point.
Yeah.
You know, do you think talent should outweigh position, or they should focus more on maybe not drafting for need, but they do have a lot of needs?
Well, I guess it just depends on what your evaluation of the talent is. Like, to me, like somebody like Berkeley Catton he's intriguing to me because he both fills the need and is high talent. Now, if I had Constant Hellenius staring at me, then I would start to question, like, am I taking him because he's a center, or am I taking him because he's the most talented guy available? Then I would have to wonder, like, if Beckett Seneca and Constant Hellenius are staring both at me at 12 and I'm Danny Briere, I have a serious decision to make because I do see more pure skill when I watch Seneca than when I watch Hellenius, but Hellenius is a center. So that would be an intriguing debate for me, whether it's truly Tij goes to the center, or if it's I'm just taking the highest skill player because we need high-end talent, and that's what I'm doing.
We'll figure the rest out later.
Even if it's a winger, we'll figure out the rest later. It's an intriguing question, and luckily for me at least, the guys who fill the need also, for the most part, are the guys that I think have the most talent. But I could envision a scenario where it gets a little bit tougher. Sure.
All right. Before we move on, I got to tell you about our friends over at Rite Aid, because it's here, baby. Memorial Day weekend is behind us. That means it's summer. I don't care what the calendar says. Summer starts Memorial Day weekend.
I would agree.
And it's beach season. It's barbecue season. Hell, it's bonfire season. And Rite Aid is your last-minute stop and the perfect place to stock up for summer. Whether you're looking for pool day supplies, you can get goggles, floats, sunscreen. Check out everything you need with one stop at Rite Aid. And you can stock up on things like bug spray and bandages. You can pick up a first aid kit while you're there, because It's also fireworks season. Remember that. Snacks and drinks, all your favorite, picnic supplies, paper supplies, and much more. And ice cream, man. Who doesn't love ice cream? Try Thrifty Ice Cream. Pick up a container today. It's available exclusively at Rite Aid. You can save $10 in Rite Aid bonus cash when you spend $50. Available the 26th of May through June 1st, in-store only. Visit riteaid.com/weekly-deals for more details. But that sounds like a hell of a deal right there. It's still going on right now. Got a couple of days to cash in. So go check out your local Rite Aid. That's valid through 5/26/24 through 6/1/24. Purchase must be on eligible project. Purchased must be on eligible products in a single transaction, excluding sales tax, and after all other applicable discounts are applied. Limit 1 per transaction. Redeemable only at Rite Aid Pharmacy. Rite Aid Pharmacy stores. No cash given. Not valid if duplicated. Not valid on prescriptions and co-pays, alcohol, tobacco products, lottery, money services, gift cards, prepaid cards, newspapers, stamps, online purchases, mailing services, licenses, or items excluded by law. Lost, stolen, or damaged or expired coupons will not be honored or replaced. Not responsible for unintended redemption. Rite Aid Rewards account required. Cannot be combined with like offers. Go to Rite Aid.
Yeah, that was a big one.
I had it. It was
one.
split up on 2 pages, and I was like, "Oh no, there's more.
There's more. Just gotta keep going." We do have a super chat.
We have a super chat.
Yeah, we have
I see.
super
Let's
chat.
get to the super chat before we get to the mid-tier wingers.
So this is from Matt
Chipman.
Oh wow, it's a $13
Hey guys,
Canadian.
Hey guys, if Demidov slides to 7, can you see Danny making a blockbuster to Ottawa for Demidov pick? And get our number 1 D-man in Sanderson, take advantage of career years for Sanheim and Konechny.
Matt, wow. That would be the most enormous trade. Wow. So okay, so let me try to get a handle on this. So the theorized trade is you're trading Konechny and Sanheim
to Ottawa for 7
and the 12th overall pick to get the 7th overall pick and Jake Sanderson, the number 1 defenseman in Ottawa.
Yeah.
I mean, look, like if Danny could pull that off, he would be the greatest general manager ever. That is exceptionally ambitious. So I guess to kick it off, I really don't think that Demidov is slipping to 7. So number 1, that ain't happening. Number 2, I really, really don't think that the Ottawa Senators are going to trade Jake Sanderson. The 2 names that I heard come up at times in the lead up to the deadline were Jacob Chikrin and then a little bit about Thomas Chabot. I never once heard Jake Sanderson, so I really don't think he is available. Also, Travis Sanheim has a no-trade clause, so he doesn't have to waive it. Travis Konechny certainly could be traded, but as we've talked about, it seems like that's going down the path of them re-signing him. So, Matt, I truly do love the ambition and the enthusiasm. I can think of about 5 reasons why that is not going to happen, unfortunately.
It would be surprising.
It would be.
It would be a little bit surprising. Let's get to the mid-tier wingers now coming up in this draft. And the first name on the list is probably the most controversial, I would say, in Trevor Connolly. Is he... All right, well, that was the center prospect.
Yeah.
Is Connolly... There we go. All right, so Trevor Connolly, first name on the mid-tier winger list. Is he, without character issues, a top tier and he gets pushed down?
So I think he would be closer. What I will say about Connolly is, and this is setting aside the character concerns, which are real. If you want to know more about them, Corey Proman and Katie Strang did a great breakdown of them a few months ago on The Athletic. Basically, what it boils down to is there were a few allegations of him using racial slurs, and then also there have been multiple allegations, not really allegations, but more just reports from parents of teammates of his over the course of his junior career, Mike career, whatever the heck you call it when you're like 10, 11, 12, 13, where he kind of was a bully and maybe not the greatest teammate. So it does appear at the very least there's smoke there. But setting all that aside for a second and just evaluating him, the player, I actually watched a lot of tape on Trevor Connolly. And look, the talent is undeniable. He has great puck skills. He's got a great shot. He's got the physical tools to be a top 6 winger at the NHL level, to be sure. However, one thing that did jump out at me is that he kind of looks a bit like a puck hog. And I don't think he uses his teammates all that well. And purely from a playing style standpoint, that concerns me. And then when you add in the fact that he's had allegations of not being a great teammate off the ice either, that worries me even more.
Sounds like he's not a great teammate on or off the ice.
Yeah, it just sounds like he's not a great teammate, period. Like, I watched him.
Hockey loves that, right? Guys who aren't maybe all about the team.
But like, I watched him play, and there were times where he was just kind of like, I'm doing it all myself. Like, this is my puck, and I'm just going to, kind of skate around the offensive zone and go end to end. And, you're calling for the puck. Sorry, it's mine. That concerns me. Now, the talent, undeniable. He's there. And like, he'll go in the first round. I imagine someone is going to take a shot at him. Probably one of the teams that generally knows that either they're not going to have that many first round picks in the future because they're going for it, or a team that, like, just as a little spoiler, the team I mocked him to was Vegas. And my thought process is basically, look, Vegas rarely has first round picks because they trade them all away. And when they do have first round picks, they usually ain't this high because they're usually going to the second or third round or the cup final. So they're picking in the late 20s rather than the late teens. This may be their only opportunity to get a blue chip prospect in the first round for quite a while. Also, they're Vegas. They don't care what anybody thinks. So they're the kind of team I could see potentially making that leap. But to be clear, it's a risk. And not just a risk because, like, he just might be an asshole. It's also a risk because he just might not be able to translate his game because he tries to do everything himself. That's my concern with Connolly. Look, in my draft board, I do not have him like as a second round prospect. I still have him in that like 18 to 20 range. But there are concerns about his game that go beyond the character concerns, which also are very real.
I see we have a super chat from Linden49. Want to get to that. Yes, Seneca will be a center in the NHL, he says.
I mean, look, I haven't seen anyone try to make the claim that he can be a center. I guess if you believe he can be a center, then maybe you're looking at him as a Cutter Gauthier type, or maybe he goes up all the way up to the top 5 because you think you can turn him into a center. Watching him, I am skeptical that he has the ability to be a center, but hey, maybe he's just the guy that everyone in the scouting community is convincing themselves is awesome over this like 6-week period leading up to the draft. I personally don't see him, but hey, Lyndon, maybe you're right.
All right, getting back to the mid-tier guys, we talked about Trevor Connolly. Now we have Mikael Branzig-Nygaard.
That's another great name.
Good stuff.
Another great hockey name.
I'm really looking forward to them fitting that on. I guess with Fanatics taking over the jerseys, it won't be that hard to fit on there.
The super small
you won't
letters.
be able to see it anyway. Yeah, but I'm looking forward to them trying to fit that on a jersey. What can you tell us about this character here?
I like him. He's a fun player. I don't know what the upside is. Like, I watch him. He's just one of those, like, high hockey IQ, great forechecker, great support guy on the line, does all the little things, does have a good shot. Like, I think he's going to score goals. But I don't know if I see him as more than, like, a good second liner. Now, at this point in the draft, when you're getting to that middle, mid-first round, getting into the back half of the first round, I don't think that is an indefensible pick. Like, I don't think getting a good middle 6 potential second liner who is a great guy to plug in behind your stars, and he's going to do all those little things. And hey, maybe if he hits completely, and I'm not comparing him stylistically, but just in terms of impact, like maybe best case scenario, he's Zach Hyman, where like, look, everybody knows Zach Hyman isn't a true talent 50 goal scorer, but like you put him on lines with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, yeah, sure, he can do it. Maybe that could be him. I think I have Branzig-Nygaard around like 15 or 16 on my draft board. I like him. But for me, he wouldn't be a realistic option. He wouldn't be a guy who I even think about at 12 because I want the Flyers to be targeting a guy with higher upside. But I like him, and I don't think he's going to bust. I think he's one of those guys where, like, real high floor, to me, close to a sure thing of being at least a good NHL forward.
All right, and the final name on the mid-tier list for the wingers, Liam Greentree, who I have an issue with. Your name's Liam, just be Bill. Come on.
Gotcha. I have the question mark on him. And the reason why I do is because, like Cole Eiserman, I'm not sure he's still in this tier. Now, at the start of my draft research, the general consensus was that he was a guy who's probably going to go somewhere in that, 14 to 20 range, and that was his spot. He did not play well at the under 18s, and it seems like that hurt his stock. Like he ended the tournament as like their 13th forward. It seems like that's hurt his stock. The big thing with him is the skating. He's got the puck skills. He's got the talent. The skating is not that good, and he is a bigger forward who doesn't play big. Now,
nothing pisses me off more than that.
Now, that's
JVR 2.0.
I mean, I don't think he quite has the puck skills of JVR, especially in close. I mean, JVR was a second overall pick for a reason. The thing with Liam Greentree, and I think he's going to be a first-round pick, to be sure, but you've heard rumblings that he could slip, and the guy that I've heard him compared to favorably. Now, obviously, this ended up being a developmental coup because, no one expected him to be this good. But there was similar concerns about Jason Robertson. That's the guy who I hear. If you're a believer in Liam Greentree, you say they were the exact same concerns about Jason Robertson going into that 2017 draft, which were he's a big guy who doesn't play super physical and he can't skate. And what did Dallas do? They took him in the early second round and they're like, we can make him into an okay skater. And if we make him into an okay skater, all the other skills are so good that he'll be a really, really good player. And guess what? They were right. He's been killing it. So Greentree strikes me as the kind of guy who I suspect might slip to a really good team with a really good developmental program. And then in 3-4 years, we're all saying, how the hell did he slip to 25?
Does it, just as an aside, because this seems to come up kind of a lot, does it shock you at this point when the NHL is all about speed now? Obviously, there's other elements, but it is a fast game.
It is.
That there are so many guys where it's it needs to work on his skating a little. Is that just a byproduct of the league is so fast, you have to be an excellent skater or at least a good enough that we think we can fix you skater? Why is this such a hole in so many dudes' games?
I mean, skating's hard. As someone who was never good at it, I can certainly tell you it's real friggin' hard. And when we say these guys are bad skaters, they're bad skaters on the level of the best hockey players in the world.
They're not bad skaters the way you at home have, skated open skate or something a few times.
Yeah.
They're bad skaters compared to a league that has Connor McDavid and Nathan McKinnon in it.
Yeah, exactly.
And obviously, everyone's a bad skater compared to them.
Yeah.
But Mike Modano's a bad skater compared to those guys.
But that's the thing. Some guys just, they don't have the muscle memory. They don't have the joints. They just might not have the body type to be good skaters. And they might be good at everything else. And because they're Canadian, they grew up playing hockey since they were 5. So they got real good at everything else. It was just the one thing they couldn't get good at is what holds them back from being a consensus top 5, top 10 pick. Now, some guys, it can be fixed. I mentioned Jason Robertson. Now, he's not a burner, but he's definitely a lot better of a skater than he was when he was drafted. Braden Point, when he was drafted, was a middle-of-the-road skater, and it was, he's small and he's not a great skater, so even though he has great production in juniors, he slips to the 3rd round. Now, he's a legitimately great skater. Sometimes guys can do it. Sometimes guys can turn from mediocre to great or bad to slightly above average. That happens, but not everybody. And the problem is that you can't really, it's really hard to know who can be fixed and who can't. You can talk to skating coaches, obviously. You can watch the technique. You can watch the stride. You can have them go through the measurables at the combine and see what you think about their muscle development and whatnot. But you can't really know for sure because you can't know how hard the guy's going to work. And sometimes you just can't know if maybe they just don't have the body type and they can't put on the weight or the muscle necessary to make them good skaters. it's just a risk. It's an added risk, and that's what makes the draft so tough to handle for front offices and for scouts and for GMs.
That's obvious. Like, it's two different guys. I look at Oscar Lindblom, and it's like, well, they fixed him well enough that he was a pretty damn good player. And then it's Matt Strome. It's like, man, he produced at every level, and then he turned pro, and it was like, yeah, you just can't keep up here.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
You have now maxed out, and there's no fixing this. I'm like, but he seems like he was always good. Why couldn't they just fix this one part?
He was always good until he wasn't.
Until he had to. And I guess everyone reaches that level. It's like in Moneyball, where it's like everyone's told. Sometimes you're 18, sometimes you're 40, but everyone's told. And like,
you can't play the kids' game anymore.
Can't play kids' game anymore. All right. Before we get to the lower tier, I want to take a minute, tell you about our friends at Mortgage CS, an independent mortgage broker based right here in Philly. What it means, independent mortgage broker, it means they won't steer you to just one mortgage option or to what's best for them. They work for you and not the banks. This is incredibly important because today's real estate market is ultra competitive. Prospective home buyers, perhaps just like you, are missing out on opportunities to win the perfect home because they don't have Mortgage CS in their corner. The mortgage company you choose matters more than ever. Even if you're already in the market, you can still explore your options with Mortgage CS. And if you do, you may be shocked at how much money you can save. Ben and Alec at Mortgage CX will ensure you have a rock-solid pre-approval, and they'll take the time to explore anything you want. That's why Mortgage CS is the mortgage concierge service. The real estate market is competitive, so you can rely on Mortgage CS to help you understand where you can be flexible in your offer to buy a home without taking on unnecessary risks. There's a reason more people win with Mortgage CS, so call or text Ben now at 267-391-7425 and see for yourself. You can also go to mortgagecs.com/PHLY to check them out or view their 370-plus perfect 5-star reviews. Just search Mortgage CS right now. You'll see them. I've read a few to you. They're not lying. All 5 stars. Check them out, Mortgage CS. This advertisement is not a commitment to lend or extend credit. Mortgage CS is an equal housing opportunity mortgage broker. All loans are subject to credit approval. Certain restrictions may apply. Company NMLS ID number 1464766. Visit mortgagecs.com for more information. All right, we'll get to the lower tier now of the wingers, guys who may be available to the Flyers at, let's call it 30, 31. Potentially 36.
They could pick a winger, certainly, with that second pick, to be sure. They could pick a winger with that third pick, I guess, first pick in the second round, assuming that Columbus does indeed relinquish it. There are just a lot of guys here. And some of these guys, there's some thought that maybe they could be centers. Like Surin is a guy who some people think can be centers. There are some people here who are in that like wing center middle ground. And there's probably some centers that aren't on this list that might ultimately end up being wings. That's the fun of this part of the draft. But as we talked about this with the defensemen especially. The way this draft sets up is like from, let's say, like 16 to 40, it's just a big blob. And all these guys are kind of in the blob. Like, I could give you little details about a lot of them. Like Chernyshov, I like him a lot. I think he is most likely to probably be gone by around 22. But if he slipped to 30, it wouldn't blow me away. Like, he's intriguing. He's a goal scorer. He's got size. He succeeded in the Russian juniors. He's had a decent amount of time in the KHL. Intriguing guy. But it wouldn't blow me away if he slips a bit. Like, this is all just going to come down to which guys each individual team likes the most. They all have positives. They do. But they all have negatives. There's reasons why these guys are not consensus top 20 picks.
Is there anyone who, you mentioned Igor Sarin, is there anyone who really kind of stands out to you in this group? Like, oh man, if he's there for the Flyers, got to do it.
I mean, my two favorites personally, and the thing is, I don't even know if either of these guys are going to be taken in the first round. I really like Nikita Artemonov. He's a big favorite of Alex Appleyard. Put up really good numbers for a draft year guy in the KHL. Like 23 points in 54 games as a 17, 18-year-old in the KHL. pretty darn good.
Getting on the ice is tough at that age.
Yeah, exactly. Like, he's one of those guys where he plays with energy. He's a really good forechecker. And you watch him in the KHL, and you don't necessarily see the skill pop. But then you're like, okay, maybe I didn't see the skill pop, but also he's doing this against men at age 17, 18.
He's trying to keep his head above water.
Yeah.
Like,
So maybe when he's 21, 22, the skill will pop, and he'll also still have all those positive, forechecking, do the little things right parts of his game, and suddenly he's a top 6 winger. He's intriguing to me, but he might not go in the first round. Like, I've seen some mock drafts where he slides out of the first round entirely. He might be a guy the Flyers could pick up in round 2. Another guy who I like a lot, I really like Teddy Stegen. He's fun. He really impressed me the game I watched in at the under 18s. I watched the gold medal game. And when I watched tape of him, he impressed me even more. He's another guy where he might not go in the first round. He really might not. There are a lot of people who doubt him because he's small and because he wasn't viewed as a particularly highly touted guy going into the year. He's one of those guys where he's won over more and more doubters over the course of the year. I didn't come in with that preconception of him. I came in with an open mind because I was like, who is that guy who I heard his name a ton when I watched that game? And then I watched tape. I'm like, who's this guy who is always doing things every time I watch a USNTDP game? He's intriguing to me. I like him a lot, but you might be able to get him in the second round. He might not be a first-round pick, but I think him and Artemonov are the two guys I probably like the most personally out of those wingers. But like, there's other guys that are intriguing, like Chernyshov. He's a guy who I would have zero problem with going with in the late first round. Vanacker is interesting. The skating, not great, but he's got the skills. Otherwise, Ryder Ritchie was viewed as a potential top 15 pick. He was viewed at times as a potential top 15 pick. He just didn't score that much this year. But the talent's there, and maybe you get a guy in him who just had a down year at the worst possible time, and then next year is scoring 100 points in juniors, and you're like, oh shit, we got ourselves a steal. So there's a lot of guys who are theoretical options that I like. There aren't that many guys that I hate. It's just a big blob.
Charlie, tell me one thing about John Mustard.
John Mustard is a goal scorer who's got a lot of mustard on that shot.
I think it might be the most important draft pick of all time. The Flyers have to get John Mustard. No, it's Ryder Ritchie, excellent hockey name, but man, I don't know if you can beat John Mustard. That's some really good.
John Mustard's a great hockey name. He's probably more of a second round pick, but he can shoot. And he's got one of those weird skating strides where it doesn't look good, but he moves real fast. So sure.
Maybe at 51 then.
Yeah,
maybe at 51.
Maybe.
Let me take a second to tell you about one of our newest sponsors here at PHLY. It's our friends over at Butcher Box. And man, I just picked out my custom Butcher Box today. I'm really excited to have it delivered. You can do the same thing. Let me tell you a couple of things about Butcher Box. First, you just got to go to butcherbox.com/PHLY. Right when you get there, boom, you pick your free gift that starts. I picked the beef tips. You get it free in your box for a whole year. You get to pick how frequently your boxes come, from every other week, every month, every 6 weeks. It's really up to you to customize this. But let me just share with you what I picked out for mine. So I get the premium steak tips free for 1 year. Every 6 weeks is how I've divided this out. And in my custom box, I have added a bag of Gulf shrimp, some organic free-range chicken wings, about 3 pounds of chicken wings in there, some chorizo ground pork sausage, some sockeye salmon, flat iron steaks, and throw in some ribeyes as well. Why the hell not? And this all comes to me for a great price, and it's with free shipping, always free shipping at Butcher Box. Something you really need to take advantage of is what we have for you at butcherbox.com/PHLY with promo code PHLY. There's just so many great, convenient parts of this, man. You get to pick how often it comes. It comes right to your door. You get to take fewer trips to the grocery store. You always have meat in your freezer ready to go. And I picked out my custom box. Maybe you want to mix it up every now and then. You can pick the curated option. Tell them what you like, a couple of things. They choose for you. Say, hey, I bet you'll like this. And boom, they'll deliver it right to your door. ButcherBox is offering our listeners an amazing offer where new users get free meat plus $20 off your first box. Join today using our link, butcherbox.com/PHLY, and use code PHLY to receive this exclusive offer today before time runs out. I'm excited for mine. I think you'll really dig yours as well. All right, I'm going to get to this mailbag question. We can do the TK stuff tomorrow because we have every single day.
We sure do.
Mailbag of the day coming from our friend Aiden M. at 19Flyers75. Says, hey, Bill, if you don't have a mailbag question of the day yet, I thought I'd ask, how much do you think the current coaching staff, Torts and Bradshaw, influence the front office's approach to the draft? How much should the coaching staff influence the draft? And first of all, Aiden, this is the most polite question I've ever been asked on the show, and this is now the standard. I'm going to select mailbag questions based on how polite you are to me.
Be nice to Bill.
Not Charlie, though. Charlie, we talked about this a little earlier with and you mentioned it in your mock draft with the selection of Carter Yakimchuk.
I did.
All right, so Flyers really think they can develop some defensemen. Listen, they turned Rasmus Ristolainen into, a negative into a positive. They went Nick Seeler. He went from an extra guy who willing to throw the body around a little to, is he a legit top four? Because he kind of played like it last year, at least when he was alongside Sean Walker. We saw the step Cam York took. Maybe that's part of his development just because he's good. Maybe it has something to do. We also saw Travis Sanheim, who I disliked up until this year. Now I think he's pretty freaking good. This might be one of the good things about the current staff, but there's always the question, how long is Torts going to be here? How long is Bradshaw, an assistant, going to be here? So how much do you think this should weigh into decisions at the draft?
It's an interesting question. Because there's really two sides of this. There is the positive side of the impact potentially of Bradshaw, because it does appear that he is something of a defenseman whisperer in terms of development. Then there's the negative side of, are there players who you would be afraid to have John Tortorella coach because you're afraid that they, don't quite have that style of play that John Tortorella tends to gravitate towards? What I will say is that I certainly don't think they should be not taking guys because they are afraid that Torts might not like them. However, I do think there is probably some overlap in terms of the things that Torts likes in a player and the things that Jonesy and Danny like in a player. Things like high compete level, high work ethic, how much they seem to care. Those sorts of things are things that will probably maybe at least put you on the path to being in Torts' good graces, and are also things that the Flyers have historically valued. But the idea of you can't take Berkeley Catton because he'll never be able to function under Torts, that's stupid. Because number one, it might take Berkeley Catton 2 to 3 years to get to the NHL, and by the time he does, John Tortorella might be either retired, fired, or kicked upstairs.
I would be shocked if John Tortorella is the coach of this team 3 years from now.
Yeah, I would be surprised as well. So there's that. Now the Shaw question is more interesting because I don't get any sense that Bradshaw is he's not young either. He's younger than Torts, but he's still 59, 60 years old. But I don't get the sense he is eyeing retirement anytime soon. And I also suspect that unless John Tortorella were to be fired in disgrace, I would think that if John Tortorella eases into retirement or eases upstairs, Bradshaw probably will stick around. I think it's notable, and there was some consternation about this during the season of, do you think somebody's going to poach Bradshaw? Well, guess what? I can't confirm one way or the other that he never got an interview, but he certainly never was in the rumor mill, and pretty much all the coaching spots are filled at this point.
That was something I wanted to ask you about with Bradshaw. Is that not a little surprising? So many openings, and the guys who got hired, there's a lot of names. Listen, when
it did seem like a very retread coaching cycle.
Yeah, there wasn't. Yes, Knobloch in season gets his shot.
Yeah.
But and he's been rumored for years to be he's going to get one of the next jobs, and it finally happened. But we get, what's his name? Oh, God damn it, the Buffalo coach going back to freaking Buffalo.
Oh God,
the
Lindy
Crypt
Ruff.
Keeper's dad. Lindy Ruff. Jeez, that blanked on me. But
Crypt Keeper's dad.
Yeah, we have all Dan Bilesma just got a job. Does it shock you that Bradshaw, like maybe he did get interviews and we just didn't hear about it, but that seems unlikely, right?
I would be surprised if he didn't at least get a couple, but I've always, and I think this is unfortunate because I would love to see Bradshaw. And look, I'm looking at this from a personal perspective and just like dealing with these people as humans. I understand that fans are going to be like, no, how can you be rooting for Bradshaw to get a head coaching job? He's good. We want him here. For me, I'd like to see a guy who works really hard and is good at his job be rewarded, but I've always been skeptical that he would be a pick because teams, number one, they like if they're gonna hire a coach who has never been a head coach before, because obviously you hire guys who have been head coaches before because you want that experience. They have a track record that you can evaluate. They're known quantities. If you hire a coach who has never been a head coach before, really at the NHL level, generally speaking, they tend to be younger. They tend to be the guys that are the hot candidate with fresh ideas who dominated in junior hockey, the Chris Knobloch types. Like those tend to be, the David Carls who won 2 national championships. Like those are the guys that are the first-time NHL head coaches. You don't see that often, a guy who's 59, 60, 61 who it's not his fault, but he's been passed over a lot in other organizations. He's never gotten his shot. It's just not the sexy coaching hire. And I think organizations, and when I say organizations, I even mean owners, because owners are a big part in the job in picking a head coach. They play a role in that, to be sure. It's not like Bradshaw is an easy one to sell to your fan base as look at how exciting this hire is. Now, I think it would be a good hire. I think he would be a good NHL head coach. Maybe a great NHL head coach. Who knows? He's just not exciting. And I think that hurts him in these types of situations.
Yeah, like a lot, when you see the retreads, maybe guys around his age, it's like, listen, Dan Bilesma, we could have someone more exciting. Also, this dude won a cup.
Yeah.
And then you have the exciting, he could be anything,
exactly.
even a boat.
Exactly. Exactly.
And then there's Bradshaw. So we had this comment from your mock draft article about the Flyers taking Yakimchuk that I just wanted to get to as well. And it was along the same lines. The odds seem pretty low that Bradshaw would still be behind the Flyers bench to coach a D-man drafted next month.
I don't think so. I really don't. Because, again, if the long-term plan, which I suspect it is for John Tortorella to move up the ladder and be more of an advisor, I don't think they would necessarily clean house of the coaching staff. I really don't. I think there's a decent chance that Bradshaw sticks around for quite a long time here.
I think
he's really good at what he does. Why would you fire him?
It's definitely possible. I always think of guys who also know what they're great at.
Yeah.
Like Jeff Stoutland is awesome at coaching up offensive linemen. So you know what? He's going to do that.
Yeah. Like why would, perfect example, had the Eagles fired Nick Sirianni after that debacle of an end of the season and hired a new coach, why would that new coach fire Stoutland? Everybody knows he's great. It would be stupid.
He wouldn't. No, and that's why he survived 3 coaches.
Exactly.
It's just one of those things. And we've talked before, the Peter principle. You rise to the level of your incompetence. Some dudes are like, I'd rather just be really good and have a job forever.
Yeah, and I'm sure Bradshaw would love to be a head coach.
I bet he would love to be a head coach, yes.
But if he's a really, really good assistant and the Flyers recognize he's a really, really good assistant and use that Comcast money to pay him like a really, really good assistant, why would he leave unless he's being offered a full-time head coaching job somewhere else?
And maybe he's in one of those, I'm going to kind of sit back and, if I get a good, I'm not just going anywhere.
Yeah.
I'm not.
And there's also an element.
I'm not going to Utah.
There's an element too here. And I'm not saying that this is the plan. I don't know what the Flyers post-Tortorella plan is. But let's just say that when the other major assistant is Rocky Thompson and you've got a 67-year-old head coach, maybe you're Bradshaw and you're thinking well, if Torts just wakes up one day and decides to retire, I'm pretty sure I'm the guy they might promote.
Yeah. So, listen, anything's possible. I have no idea, but I just, all these couple of things we talked about seem to all tie into this one idea, so I wanted to bring that up. It might be 50-50. I don't know. All things are 50-50.
Yeah,
but
it either happens or it doesn't.
Yeah, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that one day Bradshaw is coaching Carter Yakimchuk if they were to take him.
I expect at this point, I am expecting Bradshaw to coach Oliver Bonk. And that was just the pick from last year.
Yeah.
Like, this would be a year later. I don't think it's a stretch to say that maybe Bradshaw could coach Carter Yakimchuk if Carter Yakimchuk is the 12th overall pick this draft.
All right, and I think that will do it for us today. So thank you all for listening. Thank you for hanging out. If you haven't already, got to hit that subscribe button. Follow us right here on YouTube. Make sure you have those reminders set to never miss a live show. We'll be back right here at 1 o'clock tomorrow. Also, follow the podcast, PHLY Flyers, and follow us on Twitter at PHLY_Flyers. We'd like to thank our presenting sponsor, our friends over at Mortgage CS. Check out mortgagecs.com/PHLY to start your home buying process today. Don't know yet what we're doing tomorrow. I'll come up with something, though. No, we have some good TK stuff, some more fun off-season content for you. We'll have all sorts of great shit coming to you every single day.
Part 2 of my mock draft coming out tomorrow morning.
Part 2 of the mock draft. It's for diehards. Make sure you go to allphly.com. Sign up today to become a diehard. Never miss any of Charlie's awesome Flyers content. All right, I think that'll do it. My name's Bill Matz. That's Charlie O'Connor. Until tomorrow, stay loose and sexy, Philly.
We all silly like the mayor.